Okay. So, so warm welcome to you all. Hope you all are doing great. So today we are going to see the most important topic, which is security. So in the last Connect session, we were talking about the final path variable, right? So the URI templating, and I gave you some briefing about it. Probably we'll catch up that today along with the security. But today, the whole 3 hours, I have planned for a detailed understanding of the security part. So let's see how far that we can sail towards completion of the security by today. Hopefully, I'll be completing it. But the thing is, we need more detailed understanding of this security implementation in Spring Web application. So, so before we get into this, the I mean the implementation part, I just wanted to give you some basic understanding of what am I going to do with this security. Why am I talking about this security and what it means? So, if you look at the security point, so we have a library called Spring Security. Okay, and we'll be using that library in order to add the security features into our application, into the web application. So that's number one. By adding the security library, what we are going to do on top of that is generally the security, what it means is uh, the accessibility to the web resources. Okay, we call it as web resources. It could be any resource. It could be a static resource or it could be a dynamic resource. But I'm talking about more in detail of the dynamic resource. So dynamic resource, what I mean is accessing the endpoints. So we are accessing the endpoints. In the last week, we discussed about this endpoint, right? We created multiple endpoints for update, for getting the data, for opening the home page, to navigate to the add account page, to navigate to the search account page. So a lot of endpoints we used, which is a URL endpoint, right? Now, those endpoints are the one which will be accessed by the end user. The end user is actually coming into the application environment, the backend application environment in the form of the request, correct? A request comes in and the URL request is sent. Along with the request, the URL informations are fed in and it reaches the backend application where it hits the server and then hand over the request to the application, and internally a lot of process happens. Now, when I'm coming with the URL request for a specific endpoint, I want to protect that endpoint. So just like that, anyone can't access that endpoint, or anyone should not access that endpoint. So I want to protect them. So how we can protect? When an endpoint comes into the specific request, the user should offer the credibility to access that particular resource. And as in a server side, the server side should validate if the user is a valid user or not to access that particular endpoint. Now, how are we going to do that? With the help of this security library, and we call it as the first thing is identifying if that person is a correct user or not, right? So we'll be doing an authentication part. The first thing is authentication. And the next important part that we do is authorization, correct? Authorization. Authentication and authorization have to come in place. Now, what is authentication? Authentication is something like, let's say, for example, in your organization, once you step into your office premise, you need to get authenticated first. So you will have your swipe cards. You swipe the card and then you're permitted to get into your premise, the office premise. But within the office premise, even though we have the swipe card to validate us that we are an employee of that organization, in certain areas are very restricted that you, even if you are an employee of the organization, you are not entitled to access that particular restricted area. In order to access that restricted area, this authentication alone is not sufficient. Okay, not just by giving an authentication would be sufficient. You're also provide the authorization. You're supposed to be authorized. So let's say, for example, you're going to a finance team. Okay, anyone can't access the finance team. Okay, so there should be some specific role in that particular workspace. So only the finance people can access the finance resource, correct? So finance resource, the first thing is the finance person should be an employee. Okay, another organization finance person can't enter, right? So should be a part of that organization. He or she should be a part of that organization. So being an employee is the first thing. Being an employee is the first thing, and that is what we call it as authentication. Everyone will be an employee. So let's say developer, um, let's say infra person. A lot of people are there involved in the organization to be treated as an employee. So all those people are authenticated, but whether the finance resource can be accessed by the entire employee, or is that only for a specific group of people the access is? That's what the next question comes in. So in order to answer that question is where we go for authorization. So what authorization means, just by having an employee credential is not enough. That employee should be a part of finance group, or he or she should be a part of the finance role. Okay. So what we are performing here is not just a username and password is sufficient to access the endpoint. In order to access that endpoint, you should fall under the specific role. And that's why we call it as a role-based authentication. Okay, it is called as role-based authentication. Role-based authentication. Is that clear? So what that role-based authentication defines is, the role-based authentication defines that you are supposed to achieve this authorization part. So in order to achieve the authorization part, we are going to enable the role-based authentication. But before even the person gets authorized, the person should get authenticated in order to provide a default credential. That's the swiping in or let's say, for example, showing an ID card. Okay. Showing an I card is something which we say that he or she is an employee. At the security point, the security person just looks at our I card and then says, yeah, he is an employee. Fine, you're authenticated. But once you go to the finance section or the finance area, and there you have to swipe in. And when you swipe, if you belong to that particular role, only that particular venue is accessible. Correct? And that's what it all means, authorization. So when it comes to the resource protection, web dynamic endpoint resource protection, we need to activate the security, and that's one of the important uh, features when it comes to the development of a web application. Is that clear? So this is the main focus. So please ensure that you're falling under the understanding of the security in detail, so that in any interview, if they ask, have you worked around with the Spring security, you should say more confidently, yes, I have worked on security. And these are the things that happens. You should differentiate. Sometimes people will be more basic and they might be asking some basic questions to the people saying, can you just differentiate an authentication and authorization? You can just come up with these kind of more real-time examples, just not by throwing a technical response. Okay, authentication and authorization is everywhere. Okay, and that's what we follow here in the technical aspect as well. So even in the application side, so you try to mold up the answers in more detailed manner, in more real-time examples can be thrown, so that shows the confidence. Now the same real-time example which you have shown, which you have thrown to the interviewer, the next thing is you need to take the same thing technically as well. You need to explain them technically as well. That's something very important. Okay, so please ensure that you are more confident on these areas. I'm just talking about interviews at times because many people say that they are also preparing for interviews, so that's why I'm pointing out. But if you are just for self-skilling and in your existing organization, you just want to move up the ladder and you're learning, that's all okay. But anyways, the checkpoint is the interview. Either it could be an internal level interview within an organization, or it could be a client level interview within an organization, or it could be an external organization for which you might be interviewed. Always have a parallel learning as per the interview standards as well. Your learning should not be just on learning the concepts. Yes, of course, you need to learn more in detail, but see to that you are also molding yourself, preparing yourself for answering to the interview based questions. The response to the interview questions matters a lot. So this is something very basic which I've explained so far, right? So the authentication, authorization, the web resources, the dynamic protection, and so on, the role-based authentication. So these are some of the terms that you should remember. The next important thing that I would like to take you through is the technical part. Now you understood what the authentication and authorization. So the one main thing is you have to understand that it's a role-based authentication. Okay, role-based authentication and authorization. Typically, I'm sorry, the role-based authorization. Now, uh, so you have a URL, HTTP colon double slash, let's say localhost colon 8080 slash skillup bank, and you have a controller endpoint which is skillup, and down there you have something called welcome. Okay, so welcome is an endpoint, right? So this is the complete URL. When the end user sends this request, it will be handled by your friend controller, and the friend controller will hand it over to the resolvers, right? The request handler will be there, and the request handler mapping will be done in order to access a specific back controller endpoint method. So you're going to access the specific endpoint method, and that method is what is going to be protected. So, and that method is what you're trying to access. When you hit the endpoint name as welcome, that particular method need to be executed. This is what we have seen so far in the last couple of weeks. But when I give this request, if it's an open access, okay, if the application is deliberately an open access, not of any authentication or authorization is implemented, then it's fine. That's what we have seen till the last connect session. That's on Thursday. I'm sorry. So at that time also it was an open access. There was no security being built in. Now, when you send this endpoint URL with an endpoint, you'll be immediately protected from accessing the resource. How it's going to happen? It's going to happen with a mechanism called filter. Okay, there's going to be a filter which is going to be activated. You know what filters are? Filters are the one which is lined up before your servlet. So let's assume that this is your filter. There might be multiple filters lined up, and you have your servlet here. Okay. So generally what filter does is it just comes into the filter. It protects you from accessing the servlet. They will do the validations, and if you're valid, then the next request will be given to the next filter, and the filter will do another further validations or some process, and then finally it will be handed over to the servlet. And the same way the response is going to happen in the reverse order. Servlet will hand it over to the last filter from which the request was received, and the last filter will hand it over to the next last filter in the group, and finally the response will be given to the end user, right? So this is what actually happens. But if you look at it here in the security again, now I'm going to talk about that this one of the filter is going to be a security filter. Okay, security filter. I'm going to activate the security filter. Okay, once it is activated, it will ensure if the mapping is done for this particular endpoint and it has to be protected, then it will be protected, and it will prompt you a username and password. It will automatically redirect to your login page, and it will prompt for a username and password where you're supposed to feed in the username and password in order to access the specific endpoint. You're getting it? So by that way, uh, it should be a role based. Please ensure it should be a role based. So if it's an admin, okay, you have a role called admin. Now what you have to do in all the endpoints, the admin will be configured in order to access the resource. If you log in as admin, any endpoint you can access. But if you are logging in as let's say a developer, okay, you will be protected from accessing only two endpoint resources. Okay, the other resources you can't access. If you try to access, it will throw an error. Okay, you are not authorized to access a resource. There will be two different mechanism of response that we might get. One is the authentication error, another one is the authorization error. So you can restrict based on the group or based on the role. Okay, so here I'm talking about the role in detail because it is all role based authentication, role based authorization that's happening. So we can create as many number of groups we wanted, as many number of roles we wanted, and we can configure the number of employees or the number of users into that particular role, and then we can make the configuration settings whether to allow that person or deny that person from accessing the resource. So this is the overall understanding. So technically, I'll be using a filter. Now we need to see how we are going to activate this filter. And we need to activate a configuration file, Spring configuration file for security. And I'm going to show you a demo of two things. One is I'm going to show you a demo of in-memory authentication. Okay. Another one is JDBC authentication. Okay. There is something called OAuth, which is not part of this course. OAuth is pretty much a bigger module. Open authentication, where we will be using JWT, JSON web token. This can be made a little simplified, not little simplified, but at least to a certain extent we can make it a little understandable when we go on top of the Spring Boot. So when we have more microservices spinned up, then probably these exchange of JSON web token or OAuth implementation can be a right place. But for this web application level, it's more sufficient to go with the level of in-memory and JDBC authentication mechanism. There's also one more layer called data service based authentication, which I'm not going in detail because mostly that usage comes in only when we are using some more advanced database implementations like JPA, Java Persistence API also. Other than that, it's more sufficient to just go with JDBC authentication. But these two understanding itself will take some time. So I'll just try to make the best of the possibilities to make you people to understand. So anything else for the request that is going to come in have to come via the security filter, and the security filter will first verify you. And if you're a verified person, then only it will go to the specific request of the servlet, request to the servlet, and the rest of the process, the back controller, the DAO service, eating the database, everything will happen. But the thing is, you're there stopped here itself. It's we as a developer need to activate all these configurations. The reason is we are not sitting on top of Spring Boot. But when we go to the Spring Boot, as I always repeatedly saying this redundantly, that when we go for Spring Boot, the maximum configurations are reduced. But anyways, it's good to understand the base, right? So when you go to the Spring Boot, you can recall, okay, what the Spring Boot is going to do is it's going to automate the activation of a filter. But in the traditional Spring framework, we the one who is taking the ownership of activating the filter. So we'll get to know the differentiations, and so you will be having more confidence to work on that particular concept or the use case. So if you have any questions till this theoretical explanation, please do let me know. So it's I already took almost 15-20 minutes of time. So we have to quickly get into the demo. We have a lot of things to be coded. Since everything is manually encoding, so it takes some time. Okay, that's what the trainings I mean the importance is. So I just wanted to type each and every line. So if you have any questions, please let me know.
So these filters will run before uh, dispatch a servlet and after the client operation, right? Between.
The filter. You're talking about the filter?
Yes, sir.
Yes, the filter will be activated before it goes to the servlet.
That means
Before
client
the request
operation.
goes to the servlet, that is dispatcher servlet.
Okay.
Filters can't be see, filters are something that we set before the servlet, not after the servlet.
Okay.
Generally, it happens, but when you go from one servlet to another servlet configuration, there can be another filter. Okay, but initially, when a request comes in, since how many servlet we have?
Only one.
Only one. So obviously, the filter have to be kept before that. So first, your request have to be validated. It will be redirected to the login page where you will be entering the username and password, and the filter will use the security configuration mechanisms. It will go all the way the security channels and get to know that you're a valid person. Then the request will go to the servlet and the respective URL will be authenticated.
Sir, mostly suppose we give username password, man, it will go and check with server this user is there or not. After only we reflect that error message, mean correct?
Correct. Correct. Yeah.
But now without going database, how it will?
Why it will not go to database? Of course, it will go to database. That's why I said there are two variants of security demo which I'm going to show. One is in memory. In memory is like a database which is existing within the application itself.
Okay.
Okay. But another one is Jdbc authentication. So Jdbc is where we will be hitting the database in order to validate the username and password along with the role. So we'll be doing encryption, decryption mechanisms. Passwords will be encrypted and decrypted. We are going to see a lot of things over there in the database as well.
Then before dispatcher servlet, mean it will be obviously in memory handling. Correct?
No. Don't get confused. See, dispatcher servlet is one part. Now the one is filter. What the filter will do is filter will either follow in memory or the filter will follow JDBC. If it's in memory, the configurations are within the application. If it's the database, it has to go through the JDBC channel, hit the database, get to know the password, username, and then respond it. And if it's there, then the request will be handed over to the DS. DS is highly the one who is not accessible without validating the user. The user can be validated either in the form of a in-memory or it can be validated in the form of a database. For database, we call it as a Jdbc authentication.
Okay. Thank you.
I'll show you the code so that you will understand at that point of time. Of course, we are going to hit the database. Is that clear? So don't think that why are we not going through the channel of service, DAO, and then hitting the database? No, that is what the security is. Security will not go through the channel. The security configuration will internally have the capability to directly hit the database and get the username and password validated. You will write the SQL query inside the security configuration code itself. You will not go through this traditional approach of controller, service, DAO, and then database. Even before touching those levels is why we need to secure the access, right? So that's why we are completely protecting the whole application by using the filter, bypassing this channel. It will go to the database and get you validated. Hope that makes sense. If still you have any query, please let me know.
No, sir. No, sir. Actually, before I confuse, through dispatcher servlet only, we will go with our business logic. After that, only database. Now I understood. It will separate configuration. Yes.
Correct. The configuration is separate. That is generally application level. You will go through that channel.
Yes.
But now you will bypass this and directly hit the database. Okay. Okay. So let's have the same application flow here. So let it be the same. Now I'm going to use the configuration part. So going to the skill app, we have this DB configurations. We have skill up configuration, and there's one more thing called web servlet configuration. So this is which we have already seen. Now the thing that we are going to replace is, if you look at this web servlet configuration, you remember, right? We configured this web servlet configuration with some minimal 5 to 6 lines of steps. Hope you can recall this, right? Web application initializer, and then we override this on startup method carrying the servlet context object, and then we use annotation config web application context, register your configuration file, Spring configuration file. Dispatcher servlet will be registered, load on startup, and add mapping. Now, Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bypass this one. Okay, I'm going to bypass this configuration class, and I'm going to create another configuration class exclusively for security and as well as for enabling the dispatcher servlet. That is by default, which will be enabled. Now I'll tell you, it's more simplified. It's more simplified. Not of even we don't need to write these many 5 lines of code over there. It's a little simplified. But before going on to that, I have to explain you what are the libraries required, right? Only then we'll be able to use those classes and interfaces. So first step, the very first step is let's get into the pom.xml. Okay, go straight into the dependency, go to the add and look out for spring security web. You'll be getting this spring security web library. Okay, it's exclusively for web application. That is the meaning, spring security web. Do anyone have any doubts? Please let me know. So once you add this, the next important thing that we have to add is spring security config. Okay, config, right? So this is another add-on to be seen inside this dependencies. So spring security web and spring security config, two major dependencies, the library dependencies have to be integrated. But notice that Spring Security version that's currently reflecting is 5.5, but Spring Web MVC and Jdbc is 5.3. That's fine. Okay, it depends on the library that they upgrade. They keep upgrading the version, but altogether you're landing up in the 5.x family version of Spring framework. So this you should be very clear. A simple question in an interview, what I ask is, which version of Spring have you worked on with? The latest version that you worked on with. So you should say 5.x family. You don't need to go and say 5.3 or 5.5, but at least try to recall this 5.x version is what you worked with. Probably in your project, if you're working with different 4, you need not mention 4. Since you are learning 5, you can directly say 5.x version. Now, so once we have added these two libraries, okay, web and config, we can go straight into the skill app, right click and create one class, name the class as spring, security configuration, spring security, or let's say spring security initializer. Spring security initializer, any name you can give. I'm just giving it as a spring security initializer. Click finish. By creating this class, the very first thing that we have to do is we have to do an extension. Okay, extension of a class called extends abstract security web application initializer. Okay, such a big class name, right? So abstract security web application initializer coming from spring framework.security.web. Now you can recall that why I added that library, right? Only then you'll be able to access this class. This is more similar to what we have added before, web application initializer. Can you recall? In the web servlet configuration, in the very first class of the web MVC demos, I started using this configuration called web application initializer. Along with that, there's an extended thing called security web application initializer, which is an abstract. So if you just get into this, just get into the class. So you can see that it's an abstract class. That's why it starts with a name called abstract, which implements web application initializer. Both means the same. In the previous, what we did, We created a class implements web application initializer and override the on startup method. But if you look at this class is predefined abstract class, which is already implementing the web application initializer. And you do have a method called on startup method. But this on startup method will dynamically fetch the configuration classes through which chain? Through the filter chain. Okay, they have some logic of code. There is a method before Spring Security filter chain. Okay, you are enabling the servlet context, and then you are using the current class object to fetch the configuration classes and enable the root context. A lot of things are happening here. Okay, so let it happen. Whatever it is, it's all been inbuilt, and it is an on startup method, right? By this way, they are activating the dispatcher servlet. Everything is going to happen in place. Filter setup, everything is there. But the important thing that you have to see here is we need to have the call to this particular class constructor. Okay, so let's have a look at that. Very important. This class, this abstract security web application initializer class is having one constructor. You can see that, right? So this constructor, this is a constructor, abstract security web application initializer, same name as a class name. What is the parameter here is it's a variable arguments where I mean it's called as a varargs. Okay, you can see 3 dots means it's an array, correct? Whenever you come across with the 3 dots, it's an array. Array of what type? A class type. Which class? The configuration class. Which type of class? It can be anything. Okay, doesn't matter. So it's a generic. It's a generic template. It is used with the diamond operator. Okay, with a question mark saying that no idea. It could be any class, but it should be a class type, and it's nothing but referring the configuration class. Okay, so you will offer n number of configuration classes to this abstract security web application initializer. So that's why we are using this constructor. This constructor will be used to create the object of this particular class type. When it is creating the object for that particular type of class, you are offering all the configurations classes that you wanted to offer in order to make this application work smoothly. Okay, so just make a note of it. This is the only thing that we have to focus on. Forget about the on startup for a while. So by this way, you just go to the Spring Security Initializer. Okay, what you have to do is just override. I'm sorry, just write a constructor here of this class, our custom class that we have created, and inside this, you need to call the base class constructor. How do we call the base class constructor? Using the keyword called super. Yeah. So the same thing that we did in the creation of a custom exception in the last class, right? So super keyword, and we have to offer n number of what classes? The configuration class, right? So what is the configuration class that we are going to offer right now is the first one. The first one is the Spring configuration class that we have, right? This is the configuration class, right? You can see it's a configuration class. So this class need to be provided in this constructor call parameter. Sorry. Dot class. Before what we did? Before we manually gave in the web servlet configuration class by using register, and here we gave the skill up configuration. This is our custom class that we created, right? But right now we are depending on the security application initializer who's going to do all the job for us, right? So now looking at this, we have forwarded the configuration. Are we going to forward one more configuration? Yes. The first configuration that we have forwarded is Spring MVC configuration class. The second configuration that we have to forward is Spring Security configuration class. Spring Security configuration class. Only one configuration class we have offered, right? But we are supposed to offer the second one also. So how are we going to offer the second one? We need to create that. We don't have this kind of a Spring Security security configuration class. We have only Spring MVC configuration class in our hand. So we'll just go ahead and create this Spring Security configuration class. This is a very important class here where we are going to use all levels of configurations in-memory authentication, Jdbc authentication, encryptions, decryptions, no passwords, a lot of things that we are going to do in that specific configuration class. Is that clear? Okay. So now let's go straight. Yes, we can save this. Why there is an error? Okay, yeah. So, so the very first thing is you have to create abstract security web application initializer. This will help you to initialize your web application along with the dispatcher servlet and everything, because you have an inbuilt on startup method which is predefined by implementing the web application initializer interface. The second important thing is we are using the constructor of this class to forward all the configuration classes that we are going to have. Now, I'm going to create one more configuration class here. So it's going to be a class, and let's name them as login security config. Okay, or configuration. I'm just giving just login whenever the endpoint is requested, then quickly this configuration should be activated. So login security configuration. But you might ask a question, where is the filter? Filter is already enabled. That's why we did it in the abstract. We are not going to create the manual filter, but we need to do the manual configuration of enabling that filter via the abstract security web application initializer, which we need not do this if we go to Spring Boot. If we go to Spring Boot, even this set of configurations, what we did right now is not required. It will be automated. The only thing is we need to we need to write the configuration class for security security settings that we are going to do. So this also should be demarcated as at configuration, same as any configuration class in Spring MVC or Spring Core. We activate it with the at configuration, right? The same way here, we are supposed to use at configuration annotation before the class, and so it is called as a class level configuration. You're getting it? So once after we activated it as a configuration class, now this class is eligible to be dropped in to your constructor call, correct? Because this is also one more configuration class, right? So we need to register that configuration class here. This is the most important thing because this is more relevant to the security. But in the order, we are using the web MVC configuration and as well as the login security configuration. Both the classes have been uh, forwarded to the constructor of your super class, which is nothing but the abstract security web application initializer. Okay. The next important thing is, if you noticed in the last week, I was explaining about the usage of Adweb MVC config, right? If you can just recall that. Where is that? Let's close all. At enable web MVC, correct? The same way here in security, we are supposed to do at enable web security. At enable, like how we said at enable web MVC, the same way at enable web security. So what this annotation is going to do, add this annotation to an at configuration class to have the Spring security configuration defined in any web security configurer or web security configurer adapter. Okay, so we need to extend this. So the example is given like this. You can see that. Okay. Yeah. So you can see that web security configurer adapter is used. So if you look at the Spring MVC, there we call it as web MVC configurer. Now it's going to be web MVC security security related adapter class. Okay, so we just use this, and I'm going to say extends web security configurer, web security configurer adapter. Okay, it's an adapter class, And whatever methods that you want to override, you will be overriding from this web security configurer adapter abstract class. Okay, there might be multiple methods. Based on our requirement, we can override one by one. So let's say, for example, you have to go for authentication mechanisms, then you need to override the authentication manager. If it's a data service, then you'll be going for user detail service. Okay, if you want to configure the HTTP flow, you need to do that. Now, the most important thing that you can notice is there is an init operation that's taking place. This method is by default used in your class. So init web security, you can see web.add security filter chain builder, okay, which is helping us in setting up the filter security interceptor who's going to intercept it. So this class that they are using there is filter security interceptor, okay, who's going to intercept your specific request before it goes to the specific resource. If you're valid, then that particular request which is intercepted will be handed over to the specific resource. So these seems to be a little more technical. We are going to abstract this. We don't need to go and in detail, but just understand that at the time of initialization, this is happening. That's why the method is in it. Okay. Now, what this particular class is doing is implementing the web security configurer. Okay. Either way, it's fine. It's all means the same. Either you go for the implements of this interface or you go for the abstract class. So, so we did web security configurer adapter, login security configuration extends web security configurer adapter. And inside this, we are going to have one important method. The very first important method that we are going to use here is configurer. Okay, it's going to be called as a configure, uh, and it's going to be of HTTP security configurer method. Please make a note of it. We are overriding a method called configure, which is which is enabled with the override annotation. And here we have the web security configurer adapter abstract class. From here, we are overriding this method. So this method comes from this particular abstract class, and the parameter for this is HTTP security. So why do we need to have this HTTP security? I'll tell you shortly. Okay, this is one method that need to be overridden. The next important method that I'm going to override is again a configure method. Configure. There are overloaded configure methods are there. This time it's configure with authentication manager builder, which I'm going to override. Okay. So the first thing that we have overridden is HTTP security parameter of configure method. The second one is authentication manager builder of configure method, which I'm overriding. So if you want to be more precise about it, I'm taking you straight into that particular adapter class, and you can make a look. You can have a look at here. There is going to be a configure method. Okay, authentication manager builder configure method is there, and then you have another configure method for web security, HTTP security. Okay, you have a configure method with it. These two things are the one which I'm overriding. This is defaulted, but I don't want to give it to the default because I'm going to customize according to my customized version of security that I want to implement. So what we are going to do is just override the HTTP security parameterized configure method and authentication manager builder configure method. Both are overloaded. Okay, it's overloaded methods. This is clear. Now inside these methods is where we are going to do a step-by-step code to activate the security. What level of security that we are going to activate here is role-based security. So role-based security means the first thing is you need to have some group of people, right? Like Sabari, Balaji, and so on. And those people have to be grouped by different roles. Okay, role 1, role 2, role 3, and so on. Okay, you'll be having multiple roles, and each roles will have some 3 people or 4 people or 10 people. It depends on, but based on that configuration, you will be using the username and password, Username and password might be there, but whether that person falls under this particular role or not is what we call it as a role-based authentication and authorization. So, and that those level of steps of code is what we are going to do inside these methods. So whatever there as a default, we will remove it. Let's make this as a more cleaner method right now so that we'll get to know how we can configure this step by step. So I'll just pause here. If you have any questions on this, please do let me know. So this is same as like what we did for the web MVC configuration. Okay, web MVC configuration. Here we did in the content negotiation in the connect session, we discussed about it. Internal resource view resolvers configurations, we did the same way. That is for web MVC level of configurations you will do. But here we are doing the security level of configuration. Both are configuration class, but there we are activating at enable web MVC. Here we are activating at enable web security. There we extend the web MVC configurer. Here we are calling it as a web security configurer adapter. That's the only difference. So if you look at here, the class that we have implement, I'm sorry, it's an interface there. So implements web MVC configurer, but here it is like extends web security configurer adapter. Is that clear? So what we are going to do in this class, this configuration, this Spring configuration class is meant for security configuration code, providing security configuration code. That is what it means. Okay. Fine. So in this, what we are going to do is the first configure HTTP security. What we are going to do is uh, write code for configuring the endpoint mapped to roles. Okay, endpoint mapped to roles. And here we are going to configure in memory authentication details, or we can even configure Jdbc authentication details. Jdbc authentication details. That is what it means. So either you can go for in-memory authentication or you can go for Jdbc authentication. Either one alone you can configure for. So first demo that I'm going to show is with in-memory authentication details. And the second demo that I'm going to show is with Jdbc authentication details. Is that clear? So I guess before we go for the first break, we'll just try to complete the in-memory authentication quickly. So if you have any questions, please do let me know. Okay. So we'll start from this. This is the place where we have to do all the configurations. So we have this auth. We are going to use this manager, as the name suggests, authentication manager builder, right? He is the authentication manager who can help us in building the authentication configurations. So like, for example, the users and the passwords and mapping to the in-memory authentication. So a lot of settings that we can do it with the help of this authentication manager builder. So that's the parameter that we are going to use in order to configure the in-memory authentication. So auth, the variable name is auth dot. The first thing that I'm going to use here is in-memory authentication. Auth dot in-memory authentication. So it's a chained call. Okay, it's going to be a chained call. So in-memory authentication with the help of a builder. That's why it is called as a builder class. A builder class will help you to keep building the same type of object again and again. And then you can able to chain the multiple methods for on top of that object, the same object. So it's literally a builder class. In-memory authentication dot. The first thing that I'm going to do here is, let's say, with user, we can just create users first. So with user, it's going to be name as Sabari, or let's say sabari@gmail.com. Okay, with Gmail, with the email ID, I'm trying to provide these informations. Then for the specific user, we are supposed to provide the password, right? And the password which I'm going to give as a raw password. The raw password means it's more deliberately visible for the developers. So it's human readable. It's naked to our eye. And I'm going to give it as sabari@123. This is not highly secure, right? By this way, it's not highly secured. So we need to take this to the backend, and that's what we are going to do. Okay, but this is which you can do it for a smaller application or for learning purpose or for probably a testing during a testing time. Instead of hitting the backend, you can just do a in-memory level of authentication, keep testing your application if it's working fine or not. For such scenarios, you can make use of the in-memory authentication, but it's not advisable to have always. Okay, the next important thing is the summary belongs to which role. The summary is going to belong to a role called developer. Okay, he is a developer. You're getting it. So like which we need to keep chaining with multiple users and their respective groups. This seems to be a little complex, right? So I'm going to have Balaji, and it is called as a Balaji at 123, and this person is an admin. Okay, so so it could be a developer or it could be an admin. So it depends on. Um, then I'm going to have Kishore, and this person falls under the group called tester, and we have Sundar. This person belongs to the group called again tester. That in my case there is only one admin, so I'm not going to keep multiple admins. Then Steve, and this person belongs to developer. Okay, you're getting it. So this is how we are actually chaining the groups. What is an issue? With user password roles. What is an issue here? Roles dot. Okay. User details builder, user details builder, user details builder. On top of that only I'm using with user. What's the challenge? So it's user builder dot again dot with user. With user. Please let me know if you could find anything wrong there. Password dot. Yeah. I found it. I'm sorry. It's a chain, right? So let's go for and. forgot this. And another chain of object. And another chain of object. And another chain of object. Good. You're good to go. So you chain it with the AND operator. Okay. So we don't have OR. Okay. Probably if you, in case you have a question, even I haven't seen that OR method. So let's have a test over there. But we have a method called AND to chain it, but not OR. Okay. AND means it's continuation of the previous object. It will keep appending the settings onto it. So we have created multiple users. They have a respective password and they fall under a specific role. But if you look at admin, admin is the one who actually falls under all areas of resources, no restrictions at all. Any uh, I mean endpoints can be accessed by admin. Okay, so the most important thing that we are going to do right now is, after creating an in-memory authentication and defining all these info, there is one challenge that we will be facing when I'm launching this application. We'll just wait and watch. Now, first, let's go to the controller. Skill up controller. Right now, let's try to have some of the endpoints. Okay, so right now we have these many endpoints here, right? So it seems to be little trivial because of our applications. I don't want to confuse this. You can later map this, but temporarily I'm going to create a dummy endpoints. Okay, public string. Um, we have something called welcome in the, yeah, welcome is there. So there is one welcome endpoint. There is one method called uh, administration. Okay, return administration administration, right? And this is going to be again at get mapping. So this is going to be called as /admin. The endpoint is going to be /admin. Then I'm going to have it for developer, a tester. Okay, developer, tester, call it as developer. This is for first level understanding. I'm just giving this tester. These are endpoints which is going to be protected. So I'm going to call it as developer, and this I'm going to call it as tester. But admin can access administration, developer, tester, developer and tester and admin, all three can access welcome. Okay, that is what the use case is. Admin can access all endpoints, developer can access developer and welcome, tester can access tester and welcome. So means welcome is something which is not having any constraint. Any person can access welcome because that's not need to be highly secured, right? So there's no need to be highly secured accessibility required when it comes to the welcome endpoint. But if you look at the endpoints like admin, developer and tester, obviously it should be protected. Okay, these endpoints should be protected. So going back, we need to get into this first configure method. Here I'm going to use the HTTP security object. Okay, so this HTTP security object, this HTTP security is the main component for mapping the endpoint and the specific roles. Okay, you're going to have the mapping between the endpoint, who's mapped to access the endpoint. How are we going to restrict this endpoint? So that's the thing that we are going to look out here. So looking at this HTTP object will be used in order to do the configuration. But in the in-memory authentication, we were using authentication manager builder, which is auth in.inmemory authentication. We use this object. Similarly, we are going to use HTTP security. As the name suggests, the HTTP endpoint need to be secured based on the specific roles. There is a meaning. So HTTP dot, you can say authorize request You have authorized. There are many methods are there. If you go for OAuth authentication, you still have that options to be done. You have OAuth 2's based login screens will be open. More advanced functionalities are also there. But just look at this. We have something called authorized request. This authorized request can be chained with something called ant matchers. Okay, in the ant matchers, there are three parameterized overloaded methods are there. I'm trying to pick up the second one, the ant matcher with string argument, the array of string in string. So I'm using directly that. I'm not protecting based on the HTTP method. If you go for HTTP method, it is like get method or post method. Which one do you want to protect? I'm not going through the HTTP method based protection, but instead the endpoint based protection. So in order to access this controller, the first thing that you have to notice is I have to come through the channel of the controller level endpoint. That is nothing but skill up. So this you have to copy this and drop it here. Okay, and go for saying that this is the root endpoint name slash the first one is welcome. Okay, so dot you can say you can see what are all the methods you have. Deny all. You can say anyone who comes in can't access. This is highly restricted endpoint. No one can access. Okay, that is what it means. Then you have permit all. The opposite of the deny all is like permit all. As per our understanding, welcome endpoint need to be permitted to all. Correct. There is no restriction. So I'm giving permit all, permit everyone who comes into this particular endpoint to get access. No restrictions at all. You're getting it. So the next thing is I'm going to join with and. No, let's go for and matcher. One more ant matcher. This ant matcher I'm doing is for the next endpoint, which is what is the next endpoint? Let's say developer, right? Developer. Developer endpoint need to be accessed only by the role called developer, or it can be by admin. So in that case, I'm going for has roles. Okay. I'm sorry, has any role, which is of string array. Has role means only one role. Has any role, any of the role can be a part of this endpoint accessibility. So it's a string of array. So I'm going to use developer. Actually, we are supposed to give more standard way of giving us in the uppercase. So let me follow that naming standards. I don't want to bypass the naming standards. Tester, developer, and admin. Okay, so now we have dot, one more and matchers, and this is for skill up, tester. Yeah, I forgot, right? It should be for admin also, correct? So one more per role who can access is admin. So whomever falls under the developer or the admin category of role will have an access to this endpoint. That is a meaning. So we are going to end up with saying tester endpoint, and that's going to have the has any role. It's not permit all, it's has any role, and this is for tester, and here again for admin. And the next important thing is dot and matcher and matchers, and say sorry, skill up. It's an admin, right? It's not a tester. Admin dot has any role. Is that has any role or has role? You can go for has role, I guess, right? We don't want has any role. Has role. Who's the role? The admin. Correct? So welcome can be accessed by anyone. Developer should be by developer and admin. Tester is by tester and admin. Admin is only by admin. That is the set of configurations that we do here. Okay. ANT matchers. This is ANT matchers. We have MVC matchers. We have, so we can use different variety of methods. That's not a problem. So ANT matchers is a pattern matching. What is a pattern? Slash skillup slash welcome in the URL. When there is a slash skillup slash welcome appears, you permit all. Then there is a pattern match. ANT matchers is nothing but a pattern matching. Slash skillup slash developer will be mapped to developer and admin. So that's how the flow goes. So the next final thing that we have to do is the configuration part. So and so I'm going to use dot, let's say, form login. Okay, it's a form based authentication. Form based authentication. Okay, form based authentication, that is what it means. You're getting it? So we have done, it's a form based authentication, or it can be, let's say, um, cause CSRF. Yeah, HTTP basic. This is called as basic authentication. I'll show you what is the difference between form based authentication and basic authentication. So temporarily, time being, I'm just going with HTTP basic. Okay, the basic authentication. I guess we have done with all the relevant configuration settings here. It's an in-memory. In-memory is like within your project, I mean within your application environment itself, these user credentials will be created and the roles will be binded. And these are the endpoints which are restricted from accessing based on the roles and the users that comes in, who will be authenticated and authorized. And it's going to be a basic authentication, and I'm not going via form login. Is that clear? If you have any questions, please do let me know. Any questions on this, please do let me know. Okay. This application won't work. I'll let you know now. When I'm running this application is not going to work as we desire. Okay. I'll tell you why. What is the reason? Because we have to face the exception, and so that you will get the understanding what that exception means. So I guess I've done all the sort of configurations at enable web security. Everything is done. Okay. Okay. So now let's go ahead and start this application. Skillup Bank. Run on server. Okay. We'll do a one round of full publish because I've already deployed this application. Let's copy this URL and we'll keep it ready so that I mean, let's wait and watch what's going to happen in the deployment. If there's any error, first let's try to resolve that error. In the deployment time, there should be no error. Only when we hit the request, there should be some exception. But if the deployment is successful, then our settings are in place. Okay. So let's see if the application is in started mode. Yes, of course, the application is spinned up successfully. Now let's go back to our browser. Okay, I didn't open a browser. So here, slash skillup welcome, anyone can access. That's how it is designed. So let's see what's going to happen. When I say welcome, it should give access to all. Great. So home page is accessible to anyone, not a problem. But when I'm going for tester, going in as a tester, this is what happens. This you would have already experienced many times in your organizational websites, okay, official websites in your organization. You might have seen these kind of a pop-up window many times, not only in organization websites, in any I mean secured applications, you'll be seeing this pop-up window appears, right? This is what we call it as a basic authentication. In the basic authentication, we have a basic form, which is a pop-up, a JavaScript form that's been prompted internally, and it prompts for a username and password, and we are going to enter the username and password. So the username and password for the tester is what? Username and password for the tester that we have given is, I guess, Kishore@gmail. That's the user. So we need to look at this and tester. But what if in case I'm going to give developer? Okay, admin anyways can access. If I give developer, what will happen? If I give invalid username and password, what will happen? Now, when I give invalid username and password, you are not authenticated. The first thing, the authentication doesn't take place. See, again, it will prompt, hey, no, you're wrong. It's not authenticated. So you again feed in the information. It'll again prompt. So it keeps prompting again and again, right? So this is authentication failure. But when I go for the correct username and password, like developer, let's say steve.gmail.com and steve at 123. Now in this case, I'm going to use steve at 123. I'm sorry, I lost my power. As power cut. Hope my voice is audible. Please confirm.
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's good. So let me see how far the backup sustains. It's a heavy rain here in Chennai. So, okay, steve at gmail.com, and we have a password to find, but Steve is not a tester. He is a developer, right? So let's sign in. I'm authenticated. Okay, I'm authenticated, but I will not be authorized. Before we get that exception, actual exception is raised here. This is what which I was trying to explain, that this problem, okay, you have something called password encoder mapped for ID null. So during the authorization, it will expect your password to be encrypted and decrypted. But our passwords are raw password, right? I told you that our passwords are just raw password and we haven't defined anything there. So now in this authorization mechanism, this password encoder is not there, and that's why it is saying an illegal argument exception. So how to bypass this exception? Temporarily, I want to bypass this exception, but actually we are not supposed to do it. We need to formally encrypt and decrypt. So if I want to bypass this, I have to go for a no option for password template have to be used, which is called as a nope. Nope. Okay, nope template have to be integrated along with your password. So that now what happens is temporarily this exception will be bypassed. So you will not face that exception, intimating that the Spring security, hey, listen, you need not think of password encoding and decoding, just bypass this. We are giving that information. So let's go back to our application and provide the information saying in all the passwords, I'm going to give that template open and close curly braces within the string. This can be understood by Spring. Okay, Spring can understand this. It's not outside the string, it should be inside the string. Okay, please make a note of it. It should be inside the string. So now once we have provided in all the passwords, so let's say Sabari and Balaji Kishore, I guess we can drop it everywhere, and later we'll try to remove that by integrating the password encoder. Okay, so all passwords are temporarily going to be not encrypted and decrypted. So let's do a one round of full publish, and we can go for checking them again. So there is one problem. One time of login alone will be asked for. Okay, and whatever accessibility of your endpoints is there for your roles will be accessible. So next time you cannot log in until you refresh your browser. Okay, you need to clear your history of your browser. But right now, so you can see it says forbidden. Okay, because it's not cleared. So still that username password exists in the local browser history. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a round of clearing the history. Uh, that's why it's role based and it's more specific to the user who's using this particular mission. Okay, a laptop is more personal, right? If someone logs in, like for example, if developer logs in, and the developer can able to access. If he forgot to lock his machine and if he or she, the tester, goes out, if a developer comes in and if he sees that the machine is up and running and the browser is activated and the application endpoint is accessed, then he can access. Okay, so browser will sustain with that information in its history. So when I'm showing the demo, I'll constantly keep clearing this uh, in order to show you the demo. So I'll do that. Anyways, the cache size is 289 MB. I've been working since from morning with heavy weighted applications and few downloads, so a huge cache in my history. So once this is done, we'll test it. Why the forbidden comes, I'll give a briefing on that. Okay, now the password exception doesn't occur, it is bypassed because we have given nope, right? Nope is given. So now what happens is your your um, your exception is bypassed, but you are getting forbidden. Why that forbidden error? Why this forbidden error? Because the actual endpoint resource is accessible for whom? For the tester and for your admin.
Admin.
Yeah. But I've logged in as with whose credential? Developer.
Developer.
That's the reason I have been forbidden. Okay. What is this workflow is called as? This entire workflow is actually called as
Authorization.
very good. Authorization. Called as authorization. I'm not authenticating. Authentication is done already because he's a username and password. He belongs to that organization. He belongs to that organization, but he is not eligible to access the finance division. Or let's say he's not eligible to access the tester division. He's a developer, he's an employee, he's authenticated, but he is not authorized because you activated a role based authentication here. You're getting it? So now let's go up to our URL, hit enter, it'll prompt a pop-up screen appears. It should appear. Let's wait and see. As expected. So if I give the developer, it'll say forbidden. If I give a wrong username and password, I'm not even authenticated. So it'll prompt again. So what we do is we give the right username and password and see if we are able to access the tester output. What is the return that we have given in the controller? Did we give the correct returns? Aha, everywhere it's administration. Okay, let's quickly change this. Otherwise, we will not get to know the difference, right? This is for tester resource. The other one is for developer resource, and this one is for administration resource. And now we need a round of full publish. Okay. I'm still not enabled with power. Okay, now let's do a request. Okay, now we have to give who's the developer. I'm sorry, who's the tester? Kishore. While giving password, don't use nope. Okay, while giving password, you should not give nope. You should only give Kishore at 123. Okay, that's only a flag for the security to understand. Kishore at 123. So now we are getting this tester.jsp. That's fine. That's fine. The reason we are getting tester.jsp, you should know by now why it is giving that, because we are using a model and view resolver, right? Internal resource view resolver. So what we didn't activate here is just a response body. I don't want this to be done by view handler. View handler will interpret this administration as administration.jsp. It will look out for that JSP file. We have used internal resource view resolver with the prefix and suffix. So in order to bypass that, I need to opt for response. That's why we need to go for the REST controller that will automatically take care of this response body, which we need not inject it in every method. But right now in our use case, we need this. So temporarily, I'm just using them. Again, we need a one round of full publish. And meanwhile, I'll do one round of clearance of this history. But still, it's a confirmation that we have access to the tester, because tester is what is valid. Tester is what is logging in, and a valid login. So we get the access. This 404 comes because it would have taken some time to complete its deployment. Okay. That's out of memory. That's fine. So what we have to give now? It's it's kishore@gmail.com. Oops, good. I received my power. Kishore at 123. Perfect. It's better don't save this. So we get the tester. So what if in case if I'm going to give developer forbidden? Perfectly, it will respond, hey, you're a tester. You don't have access to developer. What if in case if the tester is trying to access admin? Forbidden. What if in case the tester is going to access welcome?
He can.
Gain access. Yes, he will gain the access and he will, because anyone can access the welcome endpoint. But tester is only for tester, developer is only for developer, but the tester and developer and the welcome can be accessed by admin. Now one round of tests that we have to do is, as a tester, let's see if we are able to access through admin part. Is that going to work or not? I have to clear this. Don't ask me a question why you are clearing every time the history. It's self-explanatory, right? This machine should be for tester, means tester alone should access. But now I'm trying to show you a demo with tester, developer, and everyone. So that's why I'm trying to clear that cache. You might have that question. So I mean, I'm giving that answer prior. You raise the question. Okay, so who's the developer? I'm sorry, who's the admin? I cannot recall. Okay, it's Balaji. Okay, Balaji is an admin. So being a tester, or let's say this time I'm going to access developer. Being a developer, I'm giving Balaji at 123. I'm an admin, but still I'm able to access developer. Why? Because admin have the access. Tester, access. Admin, access. Welcome, access. So it means our configuration works perfectly fine. According to the perfect matching, you are entitled to access the endpoints. But the same approach, instead of HTTP basic, I just want to show you with the demo of form login. What is the difference? What's going to happen if I'm going to use a form login? A nice form will be displayed. That's all. Instead of a pop-up screen, you will see a well-designed UI of prompting for the user's username and credential. and you can access the endpoint. So this time let's go for developer, and the developer is going to access developer, and developer is whom? Sabari. Sabari is a developer. See, a nice login screen appears. If you want to give your login page, you can still give it, not an issue. Okay, we do have the option for that. The methods are there. Now I'm giving Sabari at 123, who's a developer. Perfect. You're able to log in. But developer who's trying to access tester will be forbidden, or admin will be forbidden, but welcome will be accessible. But the same thing, if I again give access to that, let me clear once again. So instead of welcome, developer, I'm going to give a wrong username and password. Beautiful, right? It's more meaningful now instead of basic authentication where it just prompted again and again without giving any notification that your credentials are bad. But now it's more meaningful that bad credentials are there, so you better give a correct username and password. By this way, you are able to access. Is that clear? So these are all happening within this in-memory authentication and without password encryption. Now we are going to enable the password encryption, and we are going to change this in-memory authentication to Jdbc authentication. So that's what we are going to see as the next learning and the demos. If you have any questions, please let me know. Otherwise, we can go for a 10 minutes of break as I'm a little exhausted. Any questions, please do let me know. Any basic questions also you have, please don't resist yourself. Please do ask. This is what the levels of settings that we are supposed to do in order to activate the security for Spring MVC. Is that clear? Any questions? Please do let me know. So combinations will be chained with help of AND, that you should remember. When it comes to AND matches, no need of AND. But finally, after listing all the list of AND matches with the match and pattern matching, if you want to give further configurations like HTTP basics and form login, you have to go for this. So if you have any questions, please do let me know. No questions? Sure, for sure. Okay, then we'll go for a break and come. Hello. Please confirm that my voice is audible.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thanks. Okay. Uh, so the next understanding is we have to take this to the next level, that is connecting with the backend. But before we go to the backend, I wanted to make you people understand that I want to avoid this nope, right? So in order to avoid nope, that is in order to bypass the uh, encryption mechanism, we use nope, but now I'm not going to use that nope anymore. If I remove this during the authorization time, you will get the password encoder is null. There's no activation for the password encoder. So we need to activate the password encoder. In order to activate the password encoder, I'm going up to the configuration class of WebMVC. WebMVC configurer. Sorry, skill up. So you remember this class, right? Last week we wrote this for defining the beans like internal view resolvers and so on. So along with that, I'm going to create one more bean called a bean definition. OK, public. There is a pre-built encryptor available, OK, provided by Spring. So it is bcrypt password encoder. It is called as a bcrypt password encoder coming from Spring Security. Spring Security crypto dot bcrypt password encoder. This is inbuilt. If you want to change your algorithms of crypting mechanisms, then you can write your custom password encoders and also you can define it. But right now we are going with the default bcrypt password encoder to apply this encoding mechanisms as defaulted into our password. So the one thing that we have to do is just bcrypt password encoder return the instance definitions of this. That's all. New bcrypt password encoder. That's all you have to do. OK, nothing else. So this proves that your IOC container will make this password encoder ready. Now this need to be auto wired in your security configuration class. The bean definitions is given, right? Spring bean definitions is defined. Now we have to go for add bean. You prompt for the bcrypt password encoder. Bcrypt password encoder. Sorry. Bcrypt password and so we are actually looking out for the instance of this encoder, which is already cooked up by the IOC container, and we are auto wiring for it. OK. The bean which is defined is now auto wired. So we get that instance in hand. The only thing is we need to plug in. I've removed nope everywhere. OK, how to plug in is go to the authentication dot chain it with password encoder, and there we need to drop this instance, the bcrypt password encoder instance which we have created, right? That need to be dropped in here, and you can go with the continuation of with password. So you need not drop this password encoder method everywhere. It's a one-time attempt. It is an instruction in the general time, in the initial time, saying that there is a password encoder being assigned. This will be used further for manipulating your username, manipulating your passwords. Anyways, it's a raw. Developer can see, but internally Spring forces to use a password encoder to decrypt this, encrypt and decrypt internally. But it's of making no use unless if it's explicitly encrypted. I'm not encrypting it, but we will do that when we go to the database. OK, So right now we need to activate this so that we will not get any exceptions as like we got before, like password encoder is null, but this time we won't get it even though we have removed that nope. I've given this line, I've kept this line commented for your learning and understanding purpose. Okay. So let's go and clear our history once, and then we'll try if we are able to access the credentials and authorize it. So this time I'm going to access admin directly. So who's admin?
Balaji.
Oh, this is not saved here. Sorry.
Balaji.
Yeah, Balaji, correct. So we drop in this Balaji at 123. Bcrypt password encoder is activated. Encoded password does not look like bcrypt. Why is it? Encoded password does not look like bcrypt. It need not be bcrypted. I'm giving the raw password. Okay, so let me try this one. Might be they would have upgraded their library. Usually this is not required. We can go with the raw password. So online bcrypt password. So we have multiple online bcrypt, I mean encryptions and decryptions sites are there. So what you have to do is like the name, we have to give the password Balaji at 123 and hash them. It will generate one hash code. Just copy them. Okay. So go back. Instead of this Balaji at 123, you can drop in this thing. So if I want to check that, you can check that, and it will say string hash match. But for this, if I say summary at 123, it'll say it doesn't match. Here itself, you can test it, encryption and decryption. So I'm just doing it only for Balaji. Let's see if it's the bcrypt password encoder is able to decrypt it internally and help us to proceed further. Hopefully it should. Let's see. So whatever algorithm of encoding you use, that using that algorithm only, you should encrypt and decrypt. Okay. Skill up skill up admin Balaji at 123. Perfect. Now we are able to access. Okay. So like which we have to do the encryptions for everything. Sabari, Kishore, Sundar and everything. Okay. So that you'll be able to see that this bcrypt password encoder is actually decoding this. It's actually decrypting this. This is an encrypted password will be decrypted using the bcrypt password encoder instance. Is that clear? Are you getting it? The same way you have to apply it in all places, but in the earlier version when I was working, I still remember that we can just give a raw password. It'll bypass the encryptions and then it'll allow us without that. No, probably we have to test it in Spring Boot once. Okay, if that feature is because I have used work, I used to work in Spring Boot effectively with the security. So there we don't need to provide this, but here it is deliberately asking for it. So I guess we have to check there. Okay. So you have any questions? So for Kishore 123, copy the Kishore 123, go to this online encryption mechanisms and then drop in. It will generate a hash code, copy them, test it for decrypt once, and then drop it here. Or you can use your internal Java algorithm code to encrypt and use that code for decryption. Call that instance here and bind it. It's up to you. If you want to make it more secured and enable more complexity of environment for the security, then sure we can go ahead to do that. This is which I'm going to follow in the database as well. So now I'm going to move forward in using so I'm changing this method name temporarily so that it's not an overridden method. Okay. So this you can use it for your in-memory authentication steps. The next one is auth.jdbc authentication. Like how we used in-memory authentication, the same way now we are using Jdbc we are going to use Jdbc authentication. Is that clear? So we'll see this one by one shortly. But before that, we need to have the database in place, correct? So how are we going to make the database ready in place? We'll see that. I already have the script, so we'll keep that script ready. But the thing is, we have to encrypt and decrypt everything. Come on. So here it is. I already tested once before I came for the session. So you can see I don't have the users and authorities. There are two tables required. Okay, first let me explain on that. We need two tables. One is the users table. We need users table, and we need authorities table. So what is the difference between users and authorities? This users will carry all the user information. Authorities table will carry all the role information. Authority, role, right? So if you look at here, we have any combination of field names you can give. Name, the username, user email, password, enabled, default to 1, enabled, default to 1. Even if you don't give enabled value, it will be defaulted to 1. Here the primary key is email ID because name can be redundant, but email ID should be unique. So that's how the understanding is. Are you getting it? So these are the informations that we have in the users table. Now the question is, why do we have enabled? Why are we going to have enabled? What is that enabled as? Whenever you want the user to be temporarily switched off, okay, you want the particular user to be switched off.
It is
How you can
active
switch
or
off?
deactive, sir?
With the help of, yes.
It is enabled means he is active employee or like that.
Yes, he is yeah, that's what I'm saying. So you can switch off the user by setting the value to 0. So 1 means by default it is enabled. 0 means it's going to be disabled. That's the understanding. So meaning is the employee can be active or he can be temporarily inactive. So he had gone for a long vacation leave, and during that time his user credential should not be pampered, so that if anyone has his username and passwords, will also not be able to access unless he take over the role again. So till that point of period you can make it disabled. So this field is optional. This is optional. You don't need to have it. It's completely optional. Okay, but still it's good to have that. Then you have the password fields. I'm giving 100 because I'm going to punch in the encrypted passwords. Only the encrypted passwords inside the table of this particular field. Email ID and name is all pretty same, not of much issue. But looking at your authorities table, where in the authorities table you again have email, because the role, okay, the role should be mapped. So let's say summary should be mapped to admin. So you will have a role called admin, right? But there might be multiple summary. One more summary is tester, right? So he is a tester. How do you map them? What is the reference for this? The reference column is email.
User table.
In
Email.
the user table, the primary key is your email, correct? Primary key, and here it's going to be your
Foreign key.
foreign. That's the common relationship that we are enforcing here. So through the email only we are enabling the references between these two tables. So email, that's why the email is foreign key, referencing to which table? Users table of which field? Email field. Okay. And authority, what is this authority? Authority will let you know whether it is an admin authority or tester or developer or whatever it is. You can fill in those information. Is that clear? So, and down I have some sample insert of values for users and authorities. If needed, you can create an index, a unique index for the performance of the fields while search happens. So create index with that authorities on email and authority columns, but I'm not doing it. That's only optional. So these are the information. So now we have to prepare this, right? First, let's go ahead and prepare it. First one is Balaji, and so balaji@gmail.com. Balaji@gmail.com. So for Balaji at 123, we need a password encryption. Balaji at 123. Let's go and define
So
Balaji at
users
123.
table already created. Huh?
No, it's not created. We are yet to create, right? I have already created, but I dropped for showing a demo. So while you copy here, there is one problem. When we copy, it is copying with that space. You can see that, right? So you will get that space. So please ensure you delete that space while you drop it here. And one is for enabled. So the same way we need to prepare the script for other inserts. How many we had? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How many we have? Sabari, Balaji, Kishore.
5.
Yeah, 5. So Sabari, Balaji, Kishore. Okay. Sabari, Balaji is there. Sabari, and Sabari at 123 is the password. And so we have to bring in that. Then Kishore at Gmail. Actually, this should be different, unique. Okay, so we are not supposed to give the name here. It can be named with some initial or some numbers or date of birth or whatever it is. So Kishore at 123. Kishore at 123. Please let me know if I'm doing any mistakes, okay, because sometimes I tend to do some mistakes, so later it will impact while we actually access the application. The next one, that's all. Kishore, Sabari, Balaji. One more Balaji is there, okay. Sundar, right?
Sundar.
Yes, sundar@gmail.com. Do we have Steve? So 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. One more to be added. Sundar@gmail.com, and here it is Sundar@123. Sundar@123. Hash it, copy them, paste it, and delete the space. And one last is Steve. What happened? I didn't copy the script also. Okay. So then, let me first finish and copy this. And Steve@gmail.com. Steve@123. Copy the script and drop it here. Delete a space. Okay, so I guess the scripts are ready. Now, first thing is, let's go ahead and create a table. So if you see here, we don't have any tables of like users and authorities, which we are going to do right now. Okay, there's no table. So the first thing is we have to create this. Create the user table. The user table got created. Let's refresh. The users table appears. Only after creating the table, the dependent table have to be created, which is your authorities. And the authority table will get created. So you have authorities. And coming down, let's go ahead and start running the script. Oh, authority is also pending, right? This we have to do. Okay. Who's who? That we have to decide. Here, if you see, you can't just say developer here. It should be role_developer. Please make a note of it. There we have just given developer because Spring will automate it by adding the role prefixing it with role underscore. Actually, the roles have to be created with role_developer, role_tester, role_admin, role_finance. So role underscore should be the prefixing term, but advanced versions of a Spring framework of security have started to automate that. We need not do it. And that's why in any of the code, while I'm mentioning developer or the tester, I didn't mention with the prefixing term of role_. In the earlier version of the Spring, we used to do it. But that's not the case when you create a role in database. It has to be prefixed with role_. Please make a note of it. Okay. So let's copy one by one. Or let's just type in here sabari@gmail.com, balaji@gmail.com, sundar@gmail.com, kishore@gmail.com, steve@gmail.com. Okay, everything is Gmail. So let's go back. Let's reverse it. Not an issue. Not to follow that. So Sabari is this time Sabari is going to be a tester. And Sundar is going to be the admin. And Balaji is going to be a developer. And Kishore is developer. And Steve is tester. Correct? So if anything wrong, please do let me know. Everywhere the name is all correct. Balaji, Sundar, Kishore, Steve. Okay. So we can go ahead and run the script. Somewhere there's a problem. So I didn't change the name. This is redundant. Perfect. So now let's go ahead and execute both the tables and see if the respective data are available. So Sabari, Balaji, Sundar, Kishore, Steve, Gmail, tester, developer, admin, developer, tester. Users, we have all enabled, passwords, email, and the respective names 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Perfect. We are good to go. So going back to our application, what is that we have to do? So far we were using in-memory authentication. Now we are going to use the Jdbc authentication. It's very simple. We are going to write a script to select statements, and then we are going to map it. That's all. But along with this, we are supposed to add dot password encoder and drop in the bcrypt password encoder. That is must, because we have already encrypted the passwords, right? So we need a tool, encoder tool, who can decrypt that password and evaluate with the raw password what the user is entering. They will match it and then let you know if it's valid or not. The next important thing that we have to do is, in order to communicate with this backend, the most important thing that we need is the DB configuration. What we need there, not JDBC template. Okay, this is JDBC authentication. So don't think of having JDBC template, but who will have the database information? Who's going to have the database information? Data source. Correct. So data source is going to have the database information, and we have already configured those database informations where? In our JNTI server. Yeah. So just we have looked up and we prepared the data source. So this bean will offer us what object? The data source object filled in with all the database information. So we can auto wire for this data source in our login security configuration. So go up at auto wired data source. Okay. So then this need to be injected. How? Dot data source. There's a method called data source. Here you need to provide that. It's all a chaining of method. The next thing is you need to query the user table. So you have user by username query, user by username query. You can select whatever columns that you wanted. Essentially, I'm giving all the relevant columns: email, password, enabled. Okay, from users where email equals the question mark. What is that question mark is? It's a placeholder. Who will fill it? The Spring Security, who is fetching the username from the email from the user. It will automatically punch into this question mark. So we don't need to use any additional setting of this placeholder values. The next thing is authorities by username query. Authorities by username queries. If it's a group, then you can go for group, but it's a single independent users that we are using. So select again email, comma authority from authorities where again email ID is equal to this. So based on this condition, we are evaluating it. That's it. We are done. So I guess Joshua was asking the question. Now you can understand that the configuration is done here. In the initial time you asked a question, will it go through controller, DAO, servers and so on? No. Directly we have configured here through the JDBC. This will directly hit the database based on the information that we have provided in the data source and execute this query to pull the username, the email validation and the password with the specific authority. Is that clear? So this is how you will do a JDBC authentication compared to your in-memory authentication. In-memory is only during some testing time you can use it, but other than that, you better go for JDBC authentication. That's very much important. Is that clear? So any questions? Let's see if this is going to execute successfully. So this time, who's the admin? I guess Sundar is admin, right? Sundar is admin. Last time it was Balaji was admin, right? So this time it's Sundar. So let's check that. Hopefully the deployment should be successful. Otherwise, if there's any error, it will throw. I guess there's no exception. So everything went well. Now, if I ask for admin, and if I give Balaji this time, or let's say wrong password, it says bad credential, but actually the hit is happening. The database hit is happening. Balaji at 123. Forbidden. I am forbidden because I am not the admin anymore. It's only Sundar, right? So we have to log in and test if Sundar can log in successfully for this admin resource. Let's hit this once. Sundar at gmail.com. You can see the encryption decryption is also working fine, right? Cool. He is an administrator, so he has access to this. Can he access tester? Of course, yes. How about developer? Yes. And how about welcome? Yes. But this time it is not in the in-memory. It is going all the way up to your database to do the validations and get back to you. Okay. So I'm not using this in-memory authentication because the method name is different. I've done overridden. It is going only through the configure method of Jdbc authentication. Password encoder is enabled, bounded with the data source, and you have to hit the user details and you have to fetch the authority details, and internally it will apply the validations between the email ID and the authority, and it will confirm whether you're authorized person to access the resource or not, as a resource is configured like this. If you have any questions on this, please do let me know. So, yes, any questions, please do let me know.
Is it mandatory to have the table name as users and authority in the database?
Username is?
User table and authority table as users and authority always.
Not
Or
required. Not required,
okay.
because it's you who the one going to write the query. As
Hmm.
per the standards, we have given users and authorities. You can give
Okay.
anything that you wish for. Could be Sabri and Balaji as a table name, and but ensure in the query you use the same. The query matters. The query what we write matters. Okay.
Here, dot users by username query we are writing. So this is not related to the.
No, 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 no. That is not
Okay, I
related.
confused it.
It can be anything.
Okay.
So I can give Sabari underscore users also. Okay. This is only for fetching the user. Users by username means I'm fetching the users by username, but not with this naming convention of table name and this name should be same. Not like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Actually, now only I'm using this authorities. Initially, uh, in my application, I used to have roles. Instead of authorities, I use roles here. But still, it will work. Yeah. Any other question? Any questions? Please do let me know. No questions. So now you can see further customizations can be made here. Okay, I'll explain you one by one. Anyways, I'm not going to demonstrate this. You can just do a little bit of work around there if needed. I'll just give you a clue. What is the form login is? Form login is it's showing up a default form, right? Instead of default form, you can create more colorful form and you can map that. It could be HTML or it can be JSP, whatever that comes into your mind. You can just look out for it. So it can be just a URL. Also not with the extension. If needed, you can just have it, or else just give the endpoint. It will look out for the endpoint. So the thing is, you can customize your own login page, and that login page can be referred here through the login page, form login dot login page method. Then the next chain is default successful URL. Once we have logged in, by default it should go here, and from there you can go to different things based on the authorizations it will take place. Okay, default success URL, you can a page can be defined. Okay, default success page, login success page can be shown. Or if it is an error, some failure, okay, you can go for failure page. So login authentication authorization failed, so you'll go for the failure page. Default where it is going now, it is showing something called forbidden, right? Instead of that, you can have one design page where it says, hey user, sorry, you're not authorized to access this resource, so and so. You can customize it. That page you can redirect to. Username and password parameter. Since we go for the custom login page, okay, you will create a login page with the two text boxes, correct? The two text boxes name should be what? Because the Spring will use request dot get parameter. Okay, default they will use username and password, thinking that it's going to be the username and password of the text boxes, the name of the text box. But if the text box name that we have given as user and the password text box is just given as pass, then the Spring will get confused. So you should mention what is the request parameter for this form when it is submitted for these two text boxes. Username parameter will come in as user, and password parameter text box will come in as pass. So Spring should now be prepared to use request dot, for example, I'm saying request dot get parameter. What is the name they have to use for getting the username now? User. The same way request dot get parameter, what they have to use?
Pass.
Pass. Very good. Excellent. Okay. So that is what we are configuring here. And finally, if there is a logout, okay, you say you are having some logout options, you just click on the logout. If it's a logout, what will be the success URL for logout? Which page it should land once you click logout? Okay. So for that, we will have this logout options for logout success URL. Is that clear? So these are additional configurations, but anyways, I just wanted to explain and give you a briefing on it. You can try this one by one. And if you have any challenges, you can well contact me, not an issue. But I'm giving you a gist of information on that as well. This is custom form-based authentication. But if you just stop in here, this will give you what? Default form-based authentication. That is the meaning. Is that clear? Okay. I guess I'm done with the security. We are ahead of the time completion. I guess I've covered all. Whatever is essential. Almost this covers level 2 of skills with the security layer. So further you can customize it. If it's a REST calls, you can have exception. Okay, security exceptions can be framed. So it can be dot exception handling. Okay, so what should be the who should be the exception handler? That we can define here in this exception handling. You can create one custom exception class for the security, and that security custom exception class will get called when the failure happens. When the form login is unable to log in successfully, then the exception handling specific security exception class should be defined here. Okay, this is for basically we do this for REST. Okay, not in the form login because we have login page and error page. But if it's a REST based law calls, then probably we will redirect to the like how we use controller advice. Correct. The same way here we can have it for security, but that we try to have it in the uh, REST based services when we create like microservices or so in the Spring Boot. It will be applicable to define and explain. But I'm giving you a clue that we can even redirect to the specific exception handling class. Okay, we're done with it. So another demo that I would want to sum up today is with the where is that controller. Let's go for product controller this time. Okay, so that it will be quite interesting. Let's take product endpoint and quickly I'm going to create a model. The model is going to be product. The product is going to have some certain fields. Private int product ID, private string product name. How many of them are working on Angular? Is there anyone who's working on Angular or React? Is anyone there?
I didn't work on the Angular, but I learned some of the basics of Angular and React.
Okay, fine. So please do focus on Angular or React. Either one is good to have as a skill. Very essential nowadays. So that you have the skill, you have the term, right? You would have heard full stack developer. Nowadays it's going to be full stack developer. It's not about back end developer, front end developer. It's full stack developer. That full stack developer means at least you should have some 50% of knowledge on the front end. You might be strong on back end, but you should have 50% knowledge on the front end, either on Angular or React, so that you will be able to partially code and have some quick productivity in developing the application much faster. Or you might be a very expertise in front end developer like Angular and React, but you should also have 50% knowledge on the backend development like Spring Core, Spring MVC. At least to the certain level of knowledge is essential, along with backend knowledge, along with database knowledge. Database knowledge come across common. So full stack developer is front end, middleware, backend combined. All three put together is what we call it as a full stack developer. There's something called Java full stack developer. They do call it as Java full stack developer, but I'm not that much convinced by using a term called Java full stack developer. Java full stack developer means it's completely of Java only. Okay. But the thing is, there is something called front end full stack developer. I don't know how they relate it. In the market, we have that term and they give some definition, but I'm not that much convinced. Full stack developer means it's from end to end. The developer should have a knowledge on the three areas, essential areas. Okay. Anyways, if I get a time, I'll also come and launch one course on Angular, but I don't think it'll happen uh, any nearer timeline. But I'm just going to have it on my calendar.
So we can combine Angular as front end and Spring Boot in back end, right? If we are designing full stack web application.
Of course, yes, that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
So Angular
Okay.
plus Spring Boot plus SQL, or it can be no SQL like MongoDB or something. It's up to you. This is the combination. So Spring Boot means it should be a Spring framework, right? So you should be aware of Spring framework thoroughly in order to work on top of the Spring Boot. And ideally, it will be also added up with microservice. You should also be having a microservice knowledge, like Eureka, Netflix Eureka, and Discovery Server, Zool API, API Gateway implementations. A lot of things are there in the microservice layer. This is Spring Boot and Spring Cloud will go hand in hand. So there's one more layer called Spring Cloud for microservice. And that's how the combination is. Spring Cloud. Okay. Yeah. So we'll have toString method. We'll generate one toString method. Don't see have a short-term goal. Okay, don't think of too much. There are multiple technologies are there. Okay, so I'm also parallelly learning. Learning and working on cloud, AWS, and I'm also parallelly working on Python and data science. Okay, but that's too much for me. Probably I'm coming from learning background and have a lot of experience, and I'm more of passionate towards learning new things. But that's too much of information for you people. So if you have that capability, yes, of course you can take it up the channels of all layers of learning, but I advise you focus on one thing for the next 3 to 4 years. What's your goal? Are you going to be an expertise in full stack developer? Just focus on them. Don't divert your thoughts. Someone will come and say data science is good, so just move there. No, that's not should be your level of passion is. Okay, first have some skills on this. Later you can just think of having grooming on data science, or you can just go climb up to the cloud. You can go and use Azure or AWS for that matter and try to become some cloud architect. That could be the next level of goal. But anything, just have a period of time as a single attention of scope. That's something very important.
Sir, my project. Hello, sir.
Yes, yes, please go ahead.
Sir, they said in this pandemic period, we don't know when we will reopen the office, so you have to complete the certification in Jenkins, they said. They sent some vouchers and all, but I don't know even the basic. What is the Jenkins, sir?
Jenkins is CI/CD pipeline tool actually. Uh, okay. Uh, Continuous integration, continuous development, CI/CD. It's coming under the channel of DevOps. It's a DevOps tool is what they will call it as Jenkins as. So
If I
you will have a
learn that
complete
one,
pipeline you develop and then you put it a Docker file and then archive it and give it. The rest is taken care in the Jenkins. It will have a complete pipeline workflow where it goes from testing, validations, everything will happen step by step, and finally it gets deployed in the production server.
it is having scope, sir.
No, we cannot go beyond scope. See, I'm learning everything. I don't think whether it will have a scope or not, but I should have knowledge on all. Now you're saying I don't even have a basic knowledge on that. That's the question. Don't think of having more expertise knowledge. Try to adopt some basics. That's more than sufficient. Now you will get to know how to handle with that when the thing comes. You can analyze and say, okay, I can pick up Jenkins because I have some basic knowledge on that. Don't go behind scope. Everything will have a only short term period of scope. Okay, Jenkins is something which will always be there because it's a CI/CD pipeline. Probably tomorrow there might be different other tool. That's a different story. Okay, but the thing is, this is a general advice that I always used to give for everyone in my circle. Probably I'm just giving it. Don't take it personal. So the thing is, what I'm saying is, don't go behind scope. Scope is something, it will be there, it will not be there. Sometimes it will be there, sometimes it won't be there. It depends on the use case. You might not even get a project once the office reopens. Once we go to the normalcy, okay, once you go back, suddenly your project manager might say, hey, there's no much of scope on Jenkins. Probably you would have done a certification, but you should not go demotivated. You have done the certification, you got the skills, and somewhere down the lane that will help you. Not relevant to the Jenkins, probably equivalent to some other tools which is resembling the Jenkins. You can work around. Take it in that aspect. So that's how things are. That's how technologies are. And that's how people have to nowadays be more flexible enough in adopting to the technology. Have the basics in place. That's sufficient. Okay. So I'm just returning an account object here at get mapping. Okay. I'm sorry. Slash account slash account ID. Okay. So what is this? I explained in the last connect session. I was briefing that this is a URI templating, right? So this need to be mapped here using at
Path variable.
path variable. Yeah. So at path variable denoting to the data type of, let's say, int and
I
account ID. That account ID name and this name should be
equal.
same. Yeah. Or you have to use at path variable, the value equals whatever the name that you wanted to map it with this, you have to map it here. The variable names are different. So at path variable int account ID. Okay. So return new account object. Account ID is one which you are giving it in the URL. Okay, I'm just going to capture that. Account ID, account holder name, and what is it I've given next? Oh, okay, this is product. I'm sorry. Product. It's going to be product product and product ID and product price. Okay. Product ID, string and product ID. Okay, we don't have a constructor. That's fine. Okay. So now the error is resolved. So now we are going to access this product. Here also it's product. Let's keep it as skill up. No. Product get. Okay, so let's publish this and see what's going to be the result. Okay. So this time product, I guess we'll not have an access to this because we have a filter there, right? So we need to give a permission for this. Product slash get slash 1001. So now this is an error. See, URI templating variable product ID for method parameter type is int is not present. Why? Because I've given a wrong URI templating variable name and the variable name. These are different, so it could not match. So it is unable to take this 1001, the URI templating value, and set it to this variable. It is setting it, but this variable can't be bounded to this with the help of path variable because the names are different. So what we have to do now here, it should be product ID, right? So path variable annotation is exclusively to extract the path variable, URL path variable value on the line of the URL syntax. That is the meaning. Okay. I guess it's working, not an issue. So we can prompt for equals media type JSON. I'm sorry, question mark. Data format. This you can recall, right? A handshake happens for content negotiation. Okay, 1001 is coming because here I have entered 1001. If it's a 2002, it's going to be 2002. So this URL value is what is bounded in the controller. Hope you're understanding this. Right, get till this get, this one, 2002 goes straight into the product ID. Data format JSON is for content negotiation. We have already configured the content negotiation for between the XML and JSON, defaulted to XML. Product ID and product ID should be same, so that the value which is stored in this URI templating variable will go straight into this variable. If in case the variable name is different, so here it is just called as prod ID, then in the add path variable, you have to say this variable have to be mapped to a value called prod ID. Is that clear? Are you getting it? If in case the variable name and the URI templating variable name are not same, then you have to map it with the help of add path variable value equals this prod ID. That is how it works. And you can have multiple path variables also. As I said, you can say some other the endpoint name, let's say ABC / again you can have one URI templating variable, or adjacent to that itself you can have one more asking for what prod name. That can also be dynamically injected from the URL, right? So at that time, comma at path variable string prod name. This time I'm giving the same name as the URL templating variable name, and here instead of this, you can just say prod name. Right, it becomes more dynamic. Instead of the floating values alone, I'm giving the static value over there. So let's see if this is going to work intact. To be more meaningful, you can also say with the name here, prod / the URI templating. It's up to you. If you look at the endpoints of the social media websites like Facebook, okay, you will go messages. Messages will be more of what to say. It's like graphed approach. Okay, messages are graphed approach. So someone messages to my post on Facebook, and to my message someone will post it. So it's a kind of a threaded structure. And those areas, the URIs, endpoint URIs will all be with the help of this URI templating approach only. It will work. A nested approach. So get 2002 / product name is let's say iPad. So you can see iPad comes in. So next time product ID is 3002. I'm going to say iMac. Right. So your URI templating variable works fine with the combination of path variable. That is meaning. If you have any questions on this, please do let me know. Okay. Any questions? So we are actually extracting the value from the URL using this annotation called add path variable. That is what it means. And the security is not applied to this controller, to this endpoint, because I don't care about it. It can be a public access. But if you still want to restrict what you're supposed to do for this endpoint like product, get, welcome, and so on, you have to copy these complete endpoints and drop it here in the security configuration. Add one more, and matches, right? Yeah, here instead of skill up, what you will give one more is /product /get, along with that exact URI templating structure. It should be okay. You have to copy the exact URI templating structure and paste it here. That's all. So that will also be protected. That resource will also be protected. I guess today you had a little bit of high-end learning through security, in-memory authentication, database authentication. Very important concept. Always have this in memory of yours. This is fundamental. So if someone is asking, do you know anything about Spring security? You have to keep explaining about this. They might drill you again. Okay, you're able to answer to this. Let me ask another question. Can you able to explain about OAuth? If you are aware of it, brief it. Otherwise, you straightforward. You can say that, no, I have been working only on these two areas. I haven't worked on OAuth, but if the chance is given, then probably will skill up on that. So if in case people who are nearing to any interviews or something like that, please do prepare in that way. Raise your confidence level. The fundamentals should be in place. First thing for clearing an interview is you should be strong in fundamentals. You cannot compromise on that at any cost. You can have a lot of fake resumes, you can add some fake projects, and you can, but that's not a long lasting approach. It will not work for a long time. Temporarily probably you might get through, but fundamentals is fundamentals. You have to be in place. Fundamentals covers almost level 1 and partially level 2 is what fundamentals I would say. Any technology you go, you should go till the level of partial of level 2. Level 1 skill, level 2 skill, level 3 skill, level 4 skill. Level 4 is all mastery skill. Masters they are on the technology. So if you ask me, I'm not to that level even, I could say. Uh, Even I am more passionate towards Java, but I won't summarize myself as mastery. To go to that level, it will take a long time. And you need to go to the level of research. You need to contribute to that technology. Once you start contributing to the technology is where you become the level 4 and level 5. So I'm part of the Java community. I contribute the for the development of the Java technology is where I'm mastering. When I'm just focusing on developing an application using the tool alone is not to be said as mastery, but that's not required, right? In today's existence, unless you're going to get involved into the research environment, you don't need. Okay. So I guess I'm going out of box, out of scope. So I think this is done. And one more thing that I wanted to explain is, let me complete this. Tomorrow we'll have 2 hours of session, and one changes tomorrow we'll be having between 4 to 6. Okay, please make a note of it. It's 4 to 6. So that's tomorrow. I'm planning. I mean, tomorrow will be the last session, but if needed, one session, but that will be on weekdays. So no more weekend classes. So we still have few concepts to be discussed. So few more areas as per the commitment that I've given. We have to touch on testing, introductory level of testing from the Spring application, and we have to see the database thing which is pending. I was about to explain this since we have another 10 more minutes. Where is that? Yeah, I've created this use case, not too of real time, but probably I think for this level of learning, you can just work around on this. Um, no, not Chrome. This is called as a BPMS. I've curated from external blogs, multiple blogs. I've taken it. It's not my own content, but few things I've added my own in case of business rules and so on. I'll just share this officially on the group today. So please ensure you start working on it collaboratively or however you want it. You can just think of working on this. What happened? Okay. So if you see here, it's a block process management system. Okay, block process management system. It's all about blogging site. Okay, so a block management system is about creating a simple where you'll be using only. Actually, I've replaced few things because this have been curated for different purpose. What we used to have here is we'll be having Angular and Spring Boot generally, but that I've changed based on our course need. So a blog management system is about creating a simple JSP and Spring MVC based blog management system that uses MySQL as your backend or any embedded data store like H2 database or anything that you wanted, or you want to use something Oracle, it's fine. But just for sake of purpose, I mentioned this. Application will also implement user roles management, authentication, and authorization using Spring Security. Today we studied this, right, in detail. You will apply either in-memory authentication or uh, Jdbc authentication. Once the application is developed with the appropriate functionalities, the application have to be archived to war, the .war, and it has to be deployed in any application server. In our case, we are using JBoss. In your case, you can think of any application server that you want to deploy with. So technology stack that need to be used for this case study is you will be using HTML5, CSS3, JavaScript for your front end combined with JSP for dynamic scripts. Okay, so this is one part. On the middleware, it's Java 8 or greater is sufficient. Maven tool you use, Spring MVC 5.x, Spring Security and Spring JDBC, MySQL DB or Embedded DB. The server can be anything, a JBoss, WebLogic or Tomcat. Very simple tech stack, not too complicated, right? Anyways, you're already working on, you use the same setup, that's all. Just for, to be more formal, I've just given all these, but mandate you work on greater than Java 8. Who are the actors involved in this blog process management system is a blog reader is there. There is a role called actor called reader, like how we had developer tester. The same way you have reader, you have author, and you have admin. Reader who can read the blog and give comments. So you should have the option to give comments. Author can create blog, a particular story, or author can update that blog, the story which he or she had written, and if needed, he or she can delete. Admin, same as blog author, and additionally can moderate the comments posted by the blog readers. Okay, who can moderate the comments is the admin. That is what it is. Okay. And functionality requirement, I've given more detailed landing page. Reader clicks on it, add comments, search for the blog. You can just go through this. It's more self-explanatory. I'm not going line by line. Detailed function requirement I've given. So please make use of this. So almost 8 functional requirements being defined here. Okay, BPM is functional requirements defined. And I've also given the templating pages details: header page, home page, login page, author page, view blog page. What these blog pages are going to do is also briefly given. Search page, new blog page, manage comments for admin. Admin should approve or reject the comment. You can have the control for that. Edit blog page, admin page can be used. I don't think you will be able to complete all these at a slot, but at least try to go with 2 to 3 at first pace of completion. Okay, go on sprint by sprint. Okay, create a sprint. Keep the thought of a sprint, right? Agile, if you're worked on, 2 weeks makes one sprint default. So in 2 weeks, you go for at least one module to be completed, a one-page process to be completed, and it's a lifelong development. Who stops you, right? So you can keep continuing, and as much as possible, I'm there to support you if in case you have any queries or to be. Then I've set some business rules. Please focus on your application should be developed based on the client's business rule. Okay, I've defined what are the business rules that need to be followed and integrated. And security mandate, I've already told you, it can be a in-memory or Jdbc authentication, and you can follow the authentication and authorization mechanisms. And application provisioning should be mandate that it should be deployed on application server, any application server. And the important thing is you should only use JNDI. Use JNDI instead of manually configuring your data source. Okay, JNDI mechanism, configure the JNDI in your application server and enable the data source by looking up for the data source object from the application server using the JNDI template, and use the Jdbc template. Okay, Jdbc template in order to communicate with the backend. Is that clear? So the business rules are very important. So please make a note of it. Business rules are very important, and the functional requirements are very important. Step-by-step functional requirements are already defined. Is that clear? So this one actually I prepared today morning, so that's why it was probably a bit of not well aligned, but okay, you can just have this. I'll just share it today. Any questions on this, please let me know. Any questions? This might not be sufficient, I guess. People, if you're expecting something more bigger, I don't have that level quickly, but of course this is sufficient in order to gain all the knowledge and the skills. Whatever we have learned so far can be implemented in this complete use case details which I've briefed just now. So please go through that more in detail. Any doubts or any queries, please do respond to me. I'll try to give my briefing response to that queries. Okay, hope this is clear. The one more thing that I wanted to show you people is this. I'm just preparing a certificate for you people. Okay, for there is no assessment. Okay, because I don't believe on assessments. Do you know why? At least for my case, I don't believe on assessment for this training. The reason is you people have joined these training sessions purposefully for some reason of upskilling. Okay, it's your self-initiative. It's your self-initiative, so there is no need for any assessment to evaluate. It's you who have to evaluate yourself, self-assessment. Okay, so I am not going to conduct any assessment, but I'm planning to come up with one certificate. So this is the design of the certificate, which I'm working on the Adobe Illustrator tool. But what I wanted to show you is this part. Okay, so this is how your name will be represented, and I'm giving more in detail in the certificate so that whatever is possible, I'll try to add. I've just given currently 32, but this might be increased if in case we are adding 1 or 2 more hours. We have planned for 24 hours. Okay, hope this probably the colors or something like that might be changed since I'm still working on this. It is halfway of my work to complete. So hope this is fine, right? If you have any comments, please do let me know. If you
This
look
is
at
great, sir.
this, yeah, if you look at this in the PDF, I'll just share a PDF since it's constructed on top of Adobe Illustrator. It's fully, I mean, a printable version, so you can print it. I cannot get you the printed versions. So if needed, you can just print it, but I'm just showing you the zoom level of this. It'll be more clear. Okay, at any zoom levels, it'll be so means you can just take a printout at any time, and if in case you want to frame it out, you can. Any comments or any feedback? Appreciable.
I think the case study is also great because I have worked on the PHP project for wedding management. I did like root operation, like the similar thing. I had a admin page and everything. I think as I'm learning the Spring, I think this is a great thing coming up with these kind of modules and doing it in Sprint. That's a great start, I think.
Correct,
Thanks for
correct,
that.
yes. Correct. Yeah, of course, because the learning should be applied. Okay, the learning can't be just consumed. It should be applied. When you consume, you should apply it. That's what I always follow. Whenever I'm learning things, I apply it. Like for example, I've recently started working on with this Adobe Illustrator, probably some 3-4 months back, started to work. Now I can see that I can relate this work somehow. I can create this, make some creative work out there, and then work around on that. So apply it. What you learn have to be applied. Otherwise, the learning will go will the learning level will go down. Probably the mantra is, I'm also planning to have that as a tagline here. It's like learn. Usually the people used to say it's learn, unlearn, and relearn. Okay. I've taken this input from one of my boss in my organization. So he used to always suggest that you learn it, unlearn it. You have to unlearn it and you have to relearn, because the learning need to be stopped at one point of time. Okay, you have to unlearn them and again you have to relearn, because your brain can't take more informations. So that's how the process is. So if you want to have a long standing of exposure to that learning that you had, the only way is keep applying it, keep applying it. I'll try to come with, probably not now, probably in the near future, I'll try to come up with a couple more use cases similar to this. I'll come with a complete functional requirements and so on, so that you can work on the agile mode and then follow the use case and then start working on it. Okay, and that you can absolutely add it in your resume. Don't just add only your real-time official things. Okay, you can add your own project work which you have done it personally. I advise you to have that to be added and briefed in your resume, and explain about that during the interview. That shows your proficient level on the particular technology and the passion that you have. Okay, if time is given, I'll keep on talking. I don't want to bore you people, but please do let me know if there is any feedback on this, please. This will be a little more updated. Okay, this is just a sample thing. Uh, Anything to be, please do let me know.
That logo also developed by you, sir. That downwards.
This one?
Yeah.
No. These parts are I've done, but this one is actually taken from the blog. I'm just planning to edit this because it talks about the product, quality product, but it's all about a quality learning. Actually, this I'm trying to eliminate this and bring my own custom logo for SkillUp. Let me see. For temporarily, I just want to fill up that gap. Okay, I don't want to make it empty, so I just added that. So I've also given with the month the certificate. Usually the certificates won't come with the month, but I'm giving with the month here. Usually that will be drafted at the end. I'm giving this so that if you want to showcase your certificate, yes, of course you can do that. And it talks about the year and the month you completed, and the hours is mentioned, the version is mentioned, what you have learned in a gist of informations will also be featured in here. I have to proofread this, so proofreading is not done. Once it is done, then probably it'll be ready. Okay, I've just shown this. If in case if you feel something to be thrown as a feedback personally, you can just ping me on WhatsApp separately. Okay, so that's it for today. Hope we have learned a lot. Tomorrow we'll catch up. It's 2 hours and 4 to 6 is the timing. Please make a note of it. It's not 5 to 8. It's 4 to 6. So I'll try to complete maximum by tomorrow. If not, probably we'll take it up on the weekdays, but weekends classes ends tomorrow. Probably we might connect if needed, a 1 hour or half an hour, some connect sessions or some interactions that we can have. Apart from this also, we can talk about some interesting topics like data science or something like that. I'll come up free of cost. Okay. So that's just to create some social connect in terms of enhancing our skills. Okay, that's the thought. That's a thought process of such initiatives. I'll try to come up, but I need some gap because it's continuous 5 weeks. I've been involved in this, so it's not just about coming and taking a session here, right? So I have to prepare a little bit because we don't know when the technology will put you down. Okay, when the system will put you down. So I have to be prepared before I come for any session. I used to be well prepared, but sometimes even then things might go wrong. So it's been continuously for the past 5 weeks. So Monday I have a client proposal presentation is there. I'm working on that. So that's why tomorrow I'm just taking only for 2 hours. So let me see how far it goes. Okay, so thank you so much for your time. We'll catch up tomorrow. Any feedbacks on the certificate, please do post it on the WhatsApp to my individual number. Okay, so thank you so much. Have a great night. We'll connect up tomorrow. Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you.
Thank you,
Bye.
sir.
Yeah.